I think that the Godzilla creature in the film is an interesting creature, but it's not Godzilla. It's just an animal.
Zilla emerging from the middle of the street, that like underbelly shot, is so cool because it gives you such a good show of like how athletic this new Godzilla is.
And it's our first real look at Godzilla here, like a full body look. And I gotta say, like, he really looks terrible. I mean, I don't understand how a dude in a foam suit could look better, but he does. This is really bad. It's really bad.
I do like the creature bursting through the asphalt like a goddamn street shark.
Godzilla pops up through the street and Nick still just stands there.
It wasn't until the day that I went to see the movie. I went and saw this movie on opening day, and it wasn't until that day that I actually had seen Godzilla. Now, it wasn't seeing him in theaters, but there was a making of behind the scenes feature on Showtime, I think it was, and they were showing Godzilla for the first time.
I got mixed feelings about the very dramatic redesign of Godzilla.
I was taken aback.
Like, it's not Godzilla, but it's kind of cool.
I didn't know how I felt about it, but I knew from things that they had done in the trailer prior to that he wasn't going to be the same Godzilla.
Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich, the writer, producer, director team, didn't care for Godzilla. They were trying to distance it from its legacy, which in the West, due to the popularity of 1973's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which was released to TV and theaters in the late 70s, had a promotional campaign tied in with the presidential campaign. They wanted to erase that legacy because most people thought about Godzilla movies in that goofy context of things like Godzilla vs. Megalon, which is one of my favorites. I love it. I love the goofy Godzilla movies because I encountered them when I was a kid. I think the goofiest moment, there's just so many bad moments. There are some good moments.
A moment that stood out to me is when Nick pops up in the manhole, and Zilla is right there, smelling the fish on him.
There's a weird bit here. He leans down like face to face with Nick, like to smell him or whatever, and it's like swelling music. It's like, are we gonna kiss?
Surprised he didn't get snacked on though.
But anyway, after staring at him for a few seconds, Godzilla roars in his face, which is played like for comedy. A lot of stuff in this movie is played for comedy. It doesn't ever feel like there's any stakes. And then basically just roars at him and just kind of walks away.
Mostly bad moments.
Oh, it's bad. It's impossibly bad. He goes towards the giant thing of fish, and real quick they cut to like the military base, and you see they're looking at the radar and following Godzilla going towards the fish pile, and they've created like a fish icon on the radar to show where the mound of fish is. It's hilarious. Anyway, so Godzilla starts munching on the fish, and you get like a we need bigger guns. I mean, it's just everything is just torn off of better movies.
Now, we'll say there's a lot of unreal military interaction in this film, but the firing at will part, just because they lost sight while still having plenty of communication, is the one that really gets me.
The military opens fire on him once he starts eating, and it does like absolutely nothing.
Fire at will? What are these idiots doing? Don't you know how Godzilla movies work? That's just how you piss him off.
They're chasing Godzilla, and he starts breathing fire. Like, not nuclear fire, but like a dragon. And every time he breathes fire, if you listen, they've cut it in the audio for it. There's like a panther snarl or like a jaguar snarl or something like that.
Oh my god, the military just blew up the Flatiron Building.
Also, you couldn't evacuate all of New York City, which was 18,637,000 in 1998. So you're definitely killing people hiding out in their apartments.
Aren't there people in all those buildings they keep shooting at?
We get a first of multiple helicopter chase scenes through the streets of New York. This should be cool. It should be really cool, but instead it's incredibly stupid.
I think the helicopter chase scene is probably one of the coolest action moments in this movie.
This part with the helicopters flying through the city feels like a video game I've played before.
Because you have kind of a two-sided thing where first there's these team of the Echo Squad helicopters are chasing Godzilla through the city, and you get some pretty good special effects where, looking at it now, it's pretty clear that what they did is they had a model city they were kind of swinging a camera through and then superimposing a CGI Godzilla on top of it.
Like a Nintendo 64 video game, and not a good one.
But it looks pretty cool, and it really plays with the idea that the reason New York is a great setting for Godzilla is because Godzilla can actually feasibly get lost in New York because it's Godzilla's huge, but it's not bigger than all the buildings. So I like that the helicopter sequence plays with that as the helicopters are chasing Godzilla.
You still track a 200-foot lizard if you're 300 feet up.
These pilots are idiots. They fly at like 3rd story level, chasing after this thing through the streets instead of getting up over it where they can see where it's going. It's just awful. And they're zooming around, missing this impossibly large target and blowing the city to pieces.
The military does way more damage to the city than Godzilla.
And that's when they realize that heat-seeking weapons don't track him properly. And seriously, these guys are such bad shots. They literally should be stormtroopers. And Godzilla starts trashing helicopters.
Then you get this kind of tense, quiet moment where they think they've got Godzilla cornered, and then it just bursts through a wall behind the helicopters, and now Godzilla's chasing the helicopters instead. Really fun.
You don't need to be hanging around in his ass level, shooting all the buildings.
Oh my god. Dude, they just demolished the Chrysler building. I love the pilot's reaction here. Oh, damn. Negative.
And when he starts trashing the helicopter, still, nobody thinks, like, maybe I should go up above where he can reach me.
I mean, the helicopters going through the city could just pull up, idiots.
I don't think I could shake him. Go up. You're in a freaking helicopter.
They cut to the military bunker, and the mayor's pissed. And he has every right to be, because they're actually doing more damage to the city than Godzilla is. So anyway, we cut to the safe zone, and Nick is going to a pharmacy where he's buying up all their pregnancy tests.
So for some reason, Nick goes and buys all the pregnancy tests at the local CVS right when Audrey shows up, randomly.
And that's where Audrey runs into him, and it's like, oh, hey, what's up? It's me. Let's catch up. And literally, like, as soon as they step outside, she's like, are you still mad at me? And we learned previously, I should have mentioned that before they broke up, he had proposed to her. So she's like, are you still mad at me? And he points out that she left him without a letter or a phone call after a 4-year-long relationship and a proposal. So yeah, he's still a little mad. And she's like, well, people change, Nick. Like, acting like she's been wronged by him being upset. Anyway, so come on back with me into the safe zone.
Wait, this begs the question, why is the CVS still open? And why is that lady so calm? Man, New Yorkers are something else.
And they're drinking some tea at his workstation while he tests, I thought it was urine, but they said something about blood later, although it's yellow, whatever. But yeah, basically he's running we'll say urine, on the pregnancy test that he bought, and they're showing positive. And he's saying, like, look, I know this isn't what this is designed for, but it's testing for the same hormones that should show up in a pregnancy of, you know, this creature, that, whatever.
So Broderick figures out that Godzilla is a she, kinda.
Really stupid. Shouldn't work. But that's the giant leap they had to take for him to realize that Godzilla is pregnant.
I guess he reproduces asexually?
And is either here to lay eggs or has already laid eggs.
Also that he's pregnant, which I guess kind of explains the migration. Kind of.
And that the reason that Godzilla picked New York was to basically nest here.
I also think the plot was intended for a different movie, or they changed it midway, because I can only imagine that the writer had intended for it to be Godzilla is a girl and not some asexual egg layer.
So being all suave and cool, Nick invites Audrey over to check out his cool tent/lab. He
immediately is like, oh man, this is big news. I gotta go share this with the military. And as soon as he runs out, she starts snooping through all his stuff. And she finds the video that they watched earlier, the top secret video that has the survivor of the original fishing ship.
Godzilla.
And the footsteps that they investigated and all that stuff, and she steals it.
And she steals a top secret VHS tape.
And ditches out, because, you know, she's a good person. So the military has started to search tunnels to find, you know, if Godzilla's burrowed, see if we can find him. And there's this one bit where this guy's like, I didn't check this tunnel yet. No, nothing here. And as soon as he turns around, you see that, like, this eye opens and it's taking up, like, the entire tunnel. And then it starts moving around. Like, there's this big empty cavern if he had just kept walking a few feet. And the CG is freaking... Oh, it's terrible. It's like Mortal Kombat, the movie, terrible.
I love how the name Godzilla comes from the news anchor who mispronounces Gojira. That's super clever. That's a nice touch.
When the story airs, it's in Nick and the military in the middle of a meeting, and she mentions him by name. So, of course, he's immediately removed from the project and fired. We cut to her trying to reach him and being told that he's not with them anymore. And she's like, but he was just there. Conveniently, he's like 8 feet behind her. She's in a payphone, and he's out in the street right behind her, putting stuff into a cab.
Audrey and Nick somehow rerun into each other in New York, of all places.
And she correctly assumes she got him kicked off the team. And when he's like, you took all that stuff I told you. And she goes, well, you never said it was off the record. And then she tells him, like, I haven't made it as a reporter, and I just couldn't tell you I was a failure. Like, this chick's a friggin' psychopath.
And have a heart-to-heart in the rain where she apologizes for ruining his career.
So he basically gets some snarky remark for her, hops in the cab and takes off.
The story is pretty cut and dry.
Nick tells everyone it's pregnant and just assumes it will lay 12 eggs because some lizards can lay up to 12 eggs. He bases this on nothing, and they're all like, all right, 12 eggs it is. It's just so... Oh, my God, it makes me angry.
He's nesting, if you will.
And then Nick gets kidnapped by a mysterious French taxi driver.
The cab driver turns out to be Jean Reno.
One of the coolest moments is when Leon just sort of like kidnaps and brings Ferris into the French conspiracy about what created Godzilla.
Who is like, no, we're not taking you to the airport. You're coming with us.
I really like Lucy and Animal. They're both over the top, but pretty good comic relief.
Hank Azaria had run to get into his van to follow the cab to be like, dude, give her a break, when he sees that they're not going to the airport. So he follows.
Apparently, the French Secret Service is trying to clean up their mess because they realize that French nuclear testing in the Pacific created Godzilla. Okay.
They go to like this warehouse is full of weapons and all this crazy shit, and Jean Reno reveals that he's actually French Secret Service. You know, he's telling them, hey, our bug has revealed that the military is not going after your theory of it nesting, but we believe you're right and we should team up. And the reason that he's there is that they're trying to erase some mistakes that the French government made. Essentially, when we find out that there's been a bunch of French nuclear testing, and they're the ones that created Godzilla. So there you go. Yeah, really stupid.
I like that when the French guys are all getting set up to go sneak into Manhattan and they're going to have to pretend to be Americans. They get like issued out gum.
The French soldiers chew gum to blend in as Americans, which is somewhat accurate.
And Matthew Broderick walks up and he's like, what's with the chewing gum? And they're like, it makes us look more American.
A good one is they do an Elvis impression and chew gum to make people think they're American. That's pretty funny.
Jean Reno's Elvis impression is a little cringy.
So Nick and Jean Reno sneak into the quarantine zone as soldiers, and kind of somewhat humorous bit where Jean Reno has to speak and uses an Elvis impersonation for his American accent.
Roland Emmerich is not American, so that's kind of nice to see his take on Americans.
And then it just pans across all of them just sitting there going...
The military is planning to get Godzilla into open terrain, like Central Park, somewhere where they can really let loose on with weapons that don't have to be heat-seeking and really light it up.
Audrey and Animal go digging around the lizard-infested sewers.
I should point out that Godzilla has barely been in this movie at this point. We're about an hour in.
The military sets up another pile of fish in Central Park.
And he smells the second fish trap that the military set up in the park. Remember to get him into open areas so they can unleash on with non-heat-seeking weapons.
But Godzilla is on to them this time.
But they're literally like everywhere. They're all over the place with trucks and guns and spotlights, and he just looks at everything and he roars like, I'm not that stupid.
And later in the movie, they do the fish trap again. And I'm like, this time surely they've put a bomb inside. Nope, we're just going to shoot it with guns again.
So as soon as he turns around, they all open fire, and a hilarious amount of helicopters chase after him.
We see a swarm of attack helicopters.
There's no way the second helicopter attack scene wasn't inspired by Star Wars or, Independence Day.
This is absurd.
There's absolutely not enough space for that many clustered together, and the way they move feels very much like an X-Wing or some other type of spacecraft.
There's so many of them, and they're packed so tightly together. Any movement would cause a cascade of explosions. It's just ridiculous. And they're all firing? I mean, no. Absolutely not. It's completely ridiculous.
The worst people in this film is the U.S. military. They're just terrible at their jobs.
So they chase after him for this really stupid chase scene, and he eventually sees the water and he jumps like 2 blocks, dives into the ocean, which is really weird. Anyway, what he doesn't know is that the Navy has some submarines waiting for him, and these shitty CGI submarines start shooting crappy CGI torpedoes at the crappy CGI monster, who crappily dodges them.
Nuclear subs fire on Godzilla as he tries to swim away, and they blow up one of their own subs?
And then swims back towards the submarine that fired them, trailing the now following torpedoes behind him and blowing up the submarine.
Really?
The next group of CGI submarines shoot their CGI torpedoes, and they connect. And everyone immediately assumes he's dead. I mean, they're all like, oh yeah, we hit him once, he's definitely dead. Whee! Man, the military is hilariously bad in this movie. Like, just hilariously bad.
Again, 1998, this is before 9/11, so Hollywood could just shit right over them.
I swear, the American military in this movie is more inept than they are in any Bond movie.
Wait, is he might actually be dead here. You see him floating to the bottom of the ocean, and everyone's like super stoked. Oh, jeez, there's still like 40 minutes left in this movie at this point.
Nick and crew go fishing around in the demolished subways and find the ruins of Madison Square Garden.
So Nick and the gang get to underneath Madison Square Garden, where parts of it have like fallen under because it's been burrowed through. Now they climb up into Madison Square Garden and they discover the nest.
The entire stadium's covered in fish, and that's when they find the nest.
And there is a hell of a lot more than 12 eggs.
There's hundreds of eggs.
So, way to go, Papadopoulos, you moron.
These eggs look like something out of Ridley Scott's Alien.
The French are planning charges on a lot of the eggs. And Nick starts hearing noises from inside an egg. And rather than correctly assuming, holy shit, this thing's about to hatch, we need to get out of here, he's like leaned up against it like, what's that noise? And he just, at this point, I want one of them to bite his head off. I swear to God. So all these mini Godzillas start hatching out of all these eggs everywhere. There's tons of them. Hank Azaria's character and Audrey are just filming them. They're like right in front of them and they're just filming it. Like, wow, this sure is worth documenting, and not, well, we sure are in danger. Nick and the French guys are just watching it, watching these things hatch. Like, interesting. And they're like right next to them. I don't know. Maybe run like hell? I don't know. That's just me.
The best and worst monster in this film, all the baby Godzillas.
They smell like fish. They smell like food. So the babies start trying to eat everybody. So that's fun.
The best monster in this movie is the end of the movie has this crazy sequence where all of these baby Godzillas are cracking out of their shells.
Finally, some people get eaten. Faceless French guys, but still they get eaten. So somebody actually dies, other than like, you know, I'm pretty sure the people in that boat died. Like, I don't know, whatever. Just kind of silly. While some people are getting eaten, Hank Azaria and Audrey are standing there and they're like surrounded. These things are everywhere. And they literally just run within a foot of the faces of a bunch of them and nothing happens. They're not touched at all. It just looks like maybe the CGI put them too close to the wall or something, because they should have both been dinner. But they just run right by.
And suddenly, you know, you've had the whole movie be about this giant monster wreaking havoc through the city, and suddenly we're in Velociraptor territory.
They're the best because of how they remind me of the raptors from Jurassic Park in many of their scenes.
And this scene really feels like they just wanted to do the raptor scene from Jurassic Park, but it's like 1,000 times shittier.
I do think this whole section was kind of a cool twist, but it was also clearly an attempt to rip off of the raptors from Jurassic Park.
The mini-Zillas were fun, but I also think that they're an exact ripoff of a Velociraptor and a T-Rex.
The Jurassic Park raptor scene is like iconic. This is trash because the CGI is just a wreck.
This movie's, again, like I said, not super inspired by Godzilla. It's more like Jurassic Park crossed with Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
I mean, coming straight out of the heels of 1993's Jurassic Park.
I mean, it takes a lot from Jurassic Park, where you have the T-Rex sequence and then you have the Velociraptor in the enclosed space sequence.
The French dude has Matthew Broderick try and call in an airstrike at the stadium.
But the Frenchmen are not faring well. I mean, these guys suck. I don't know how they got to be Secret Service, because they're terrible. They don't accomplish anything, and the two guys that are not Jean Reno both get eaten fairly quickly. And we see Nick, in another example of these things like not really being threatening at all, Nick is surrounded by a bunch of them and has time to back up against the wall, hit an elevator call button like 55 times, get in the elevator and hit the door close button. And the only thing he has to do to not get hurt is like kick one of these things in the head. They should have torn him to pieces like 5 times over if they were halfway competent, but maybe just because they're literally minutes old. Who knows?
And it's great. The baby Godzillas chasing everyone through Madison Square Garden is really a lot of fun.
Hey, there's a Blockbuster sign.
Oh, hey, look, a Blockbuster logo.
I really appreciate the elevator jokes.
In that both it's scary and also there's a shot where there's a bunch of baby Godzillas slipping on a bunch of gumballs on the floor.
There is a funny bit, though, where he's on the elevator and he's like, oh, thank God. Holy crap. Oh, Jesus. And the door dings and it opens up to a room where a bunch of the babies, which at this point are like 9 feet tall, are eating like popcorn and stuff. Like they're trashing this room. And he just goes, like, when the door opens, they all pause and turn to look at him. And he just goes like, wrong floor. And it just hits closed door. And it was kind of a funny bit.
Because you gotta have the jokes.
French guy up the camcorder.
He runs into Jean Reno, tells him the babies are loose. And we got to get the hell out of here. We got to, do something because this is really bad. And as they're talking, Hank Azaria's character and Audrey fall out of the air vent right next to them because, again, everything has to happen right next to people. Audrey conveniently knows where the broadcast booth is in Madison Square Garden because her network covers Rangers games. I don't know how she would know this stuff, but whatever. Who cares?
Audrey realizes a way of getting a message to the outside. Oh, that's right. None of them had cell phones back then.
And he somehow knows the babies are all born pregnant. No evidence is given this whatsoever. No study's been done whatsoever. He's just making a wild assumption. But it works because the math bears out that if these things age and procreate at the speed he thinks they're going to, that very soon there could be hundreds of thousands of them and they need to do something.
Nick explains that the baby Godzillas are born pregnant at 9 feet tall, and if they get out of the nest, they will multiply by 40,000 in the first year, and could become the dominant form of life on the planet.
So they say, look, it doesn't matter what happens to us, order a bombing of Madison Square Garden, and they do.
They manage to broadcast a news report from the stadium, and the military gives them 6 minutes to evacuate.
So anyway, the babies break in, they're chasing everybody out. At one point, they slip on a bunch of like marbles and gumballs and basketballs, like a freaking slapstick comedy, like a Marx Brothers bit. It's really shitty. I don't know, man. I can keep going. Like, there's so much stuff happens, it just doesn't matter. But anyway, Madison Square Garden gets blown up.
But they're also the worst because of how easily they are defeated. They're just not all that monstrous once there's a bunch of little dead Godzilla corpses everywhere.
All the babies die. Thank God.
I'm sorry, but there's no way they outran that explosion. That whole stadium went nuclear.
Immediately after the explosion, Audrey and Nick kiss. Like, oh, everything's good. The end.
And then we get a romantic kiss and music swell. Jean Reno says, I could use a coffee. Couldn't we all?
Oh, thank God. Oh, no, wait. There's like 35 minutes left of this dumpster fire. So, you know something's going to happen.
But the plot twist here is that Godzilla is not dead after all.
And out of the ashes of Madison Square Garden, the OG Godzilla bursts up. Apparently the torpedoes didn't kill him, and they somehow missed him. How these subs that were right in front of him with radar didn't see him going. I don't know, man. This is ridiculous. But anyway, he pops up.
And he's pissed.
He looks down and sees his baby's dead, and he looks around, and the first thing he sees is Nick and his gang, and he is pissed.
Although this latter half of the movie has been dragging a little bit, and maybe they're leaning a little too much into the comedy elements and not enough into the horror elements, this whole ending is pretty great. There's that moment where you see Godzilla looking down at his babies as they're dying or laying there dead, and then he looks up at the people, and it's like one of those oh shit moments.
It would add more gravitas to the film if Godzilla was a mama protecting her eggs. But someone was like, nah, Godzilla has to be a strong male.
The part where they're running from Godzilla is probably the best part of the movie. It's pretty tense.
So they stumble around and trip over each other and half-speed run and somehow get away from this thing until they find an unlocked cab and take off in that.
They hijack a taxi. Godzilla tries to cut them off. There's another Taco Bell ad.
Godzilla's chasing them around. They're tearing ass through the streets. And somehow the military still doesn't realize this thing's alive and running around. Somehow.
How is there electricity in the city at this point?
The best vehicle, though, is totally the cab. That thing could take a beating.
They run into... They see where a bunch of soldiers are, so Nick tells them to turn around. They drive past them, and Nick smartly throws the cab medallion at them so they know what the radio frequency they're on.
This whole chase sequence, it feels like a ride. Like in a good way.
I don't know, man. God, this is so stupid. stupid. So anyway, they ordered the fighter jets that were attacking Godzilla earlier to come back to the island.
There's some really great stunts and pyrotechnics here.
So the car gets trapped in a tunnel. They blind Godzilla with high beams on their lights because, I mean, really, the friggin' spotlights didn't blind him earlier, but this works? Okay.
It's intense, it's fast-paced, it's all over the place.
They drive onto the Brooklyn Bridge, where he somehow gets ahead of them and underneath the road and ahead of them, and he pops up and, like, basically eats their car.
We're in his mouth! We are in his mouth!
Doesn't crush it, he just has it in his mouth like, "Rrr."
I mean, they drove out his mouth like it was the space worm from Star Wars.
We're going the wrong way, man! Animal's great.
And Nick finds there's like a cable with sparks coming off of it. I don't know what it's connected to, but okay. In Godzilla's mouth, like with a bunch of other crap that he picked up with their car. So Nick grabs that and shocks him in the gums, which is actually pretty smart. And then they drive out of his mouth.
Okay, so this Godzilla is determined. I want to point out that Zilla is showing some very keen intelligence. I mean, he shows intuition, memory, empathy, and tactical thinking. Lizards don't even show empathy for their young usually.
It is actually kind of smart too.
It kind of feels wrong for them to kill it. And then finally at the end, through sheer luck, Zilla gets stuck on the suspension cables on the bridge.
Oh God.
Again, going back to how dumb the military was, rolling up in like 400 tanks, artillery, 100 fully armed helicopters, eventually jets.
So they drive on the Brooklyn Bridge. His weight starts weighing it down, and the suspension cables start falling on him and wrapping him up and get him stuck. And then fighter jets make a bunch of turns at him and just missile the shit out of him until he's down.
That just seemed like a crazy amount of ordnance, especially the small arms.
I feel really bad for the guy. He wasn't trying to destroy the city. It was just in his way. He didn't mean to try and eat them.
I mean, it took 12 AGM-84E missiles at a total cost of $8,640,000 to finally destroy Zilla. But at least this one could bleed a little bit, though not much.
Poor nuclear lizard.
And then Nick walks up in the pouring rain and just stares at him while he's going like, and watches the light go out of his eyes like he's a freaking T-100.
This moment it's played up like really emotionally. It's very sad. I mean, you even hear its heartbeat slowing and then stopping as its eyes close. It's kind of weird tonally that we go from this massive, scary action scene to feeling bad for Godzilla and then everyone cheering because he's dead.
Hooray, it's dead. Wee. Ugh.
It's kind of messed up. The humans are totally the bad guys in this one, aren't they? Got a funny moment of Lucy saying, "That's my husband. I'm gonna kill him. Woo!"
So Harry Shearer runs up to Audrey like, "Hey, we did it." And she quits.
Nick promises an exclusive to Audrey. Audrey rage quits pretty dramatically.
Hank Azaria's character realizes his tape is missing and that John Reno probably stole it.
The French guy steals Animal's footage and then calls from a payphone to say that he has to make some edits to the tape.
He calls Nick on a phone. He's like, "Hey, I stole your friend's tape. I will edit some stuff out and you'll get it back, eh?" Like, this matters at all. Like, anybody.
I also loved all the product placement. Kodak, Taco Bell, Blockbuster Video, Sony. I mean, there was a lot.
This movie is totally a time capsule. It's like, how many 90s references can we cram into this one movie?
It's just funny how blatant it was, though. At least now they usually blend it into things more, or like you might notice a cell phone.
And look, I do agree it does kind of shit on the idea, the concepts of what Godzilla was in those initial movies.
Emmerich and Devlin did not want anything to do with this. They actually rejected this once, and then TriStar told them, "You are going to do this movie." But they were really apprehensive because they didn't want to fall into the schlock of the Godzilla 60s and 70s. So they were very apprehensive. They were very afraid to do this.
Going back to 1954/56 Godzilla, just shrugged off rockets. So,
He's not indestructible, but they kind of pair that off with he's fast, he's quick, which is something they couldn't do back then.
But Toho did love this. They loved the Godzilla design, they loved the movie, and they genuinely wanted TriStar to continue making movies, and Emmerich did as well. I actually can't find anything on why they never did make 2 more films, which was the plan. And the film ends just as it began, an explosion that leaves an egg behind.
And believe it or not, this movie actually ended on a cliffhanger.
Anyway. Oh, God. because they had to tease a sequel.
We see one surviving egg in the ruins of Madison Square Garden.
Under Madison Square Garden, a single egg remains unmolested, undestroyed.
And it pops open
And it starts to hatch.
to reveal a new son of Godzilla.
And the camera goes black, just like my soul.
This actually reminded me a lot of the ending of the 90s Super Mario Brothers movie, which also had a very cringy cliffhanger. I'm still waiting for that sequel. Cut to the Puff Daddy song.
Come with me. Do, 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 do.
Uh-huh, yeah. Uh-huh, yeah, Uh-huh, yeah. Hear my cries, hear my call. Try to trap me, bad rap. Wiretap me, backstab me. Break the fate, fall from grace. Tell me lies, time flies. Close your eyes, come with me. Yeah, come with me. Holy shit. I'm listening to the lyrics of this thing, and the Puff Daddy song is totally about Godzilla, isn't it? It's like from his POV. Yeah, you said to trust you. You'd never hurt me. Now I'm disgusted. Since then I adjusted. Certainly you fooled me, ridiculed me, left me hanging. Now it's a boomerang. Right back at you. Think long range. Narrow-minded. Let me blinded. I co-signed it. It backfired, but I'm bouncing back. You want to end me? Feel the drama. Come with me. It's 100% about emo Godzilla.
Oh man, and that teaser at the end, it leads you to believe that they at least made this with the idea of sequels in mind.
There was no sequel. That was a cartoon, I guess, and that was pretty good.
I close my eyes and I see you standing there. I cry tears of sorrow. I die. I'm destructive. I want to fight you. I'll frickin' bite you. Can't stand nobody like you. You can't run. You can't hide. No surprise. Close your eyes. Come with me. Yeah. Yeah, after revisiting this, I kind of want to go and watch the animated series.
The movie's not very good.
It's not as bad as people think.
This is such dog.
Beast from 20,000 Fathoms has been touched on briefly when y'all were talking about the first Godzilla movie. This is really more closely linked to that film.
It feels a lot like it's a remake of the original Godzilla movie.
So they kind of reapproached it as a renewed 54. This film takes a lot from the 1954 Godzilla. There are a lot of identical scenes, but at the same time, it was for the American audience.
In that, you know, there's these kind of attacks that happen in less populated areas, and we go there to learn a little bit about those, like what's going on.
It's almost like a watered down version of the original. Boat gets hit, everyone goes into a panic, and then, of course, everyone starts tracking this creature, trying to figure out where it's going, and it winds up in New York versus Tokyo, but not for the same reasons.
And then we come back to a populous area, and everything humanity does to try to defend itself doesn't actually work very well. Like, there's a lot of, I feel like, echoes of the original in this, but this is also, like, a good horror movie, and it's got some funny bits to it, and it's got a weird romance subplot that you don't need in your monster movie, but why not have a weird romance subplot in your monster movie?
This film was not made with the Japanese in mind. This film was made for Americans. And this seems to be something that a lot of people tend to forget, particularly the Godzilla fans at the time gave it a lot of trash because it was not a Japanese movie, but it was never intended to be. They never pretended to do anything Japanese about it.
And I think a lot of the hate comes from the fact that Godzilla is not what we typically think of Godzilla as.
I think that the Godzilla creature in the film is an interesting creature, but it's not Godzilla, it's just an animal.
I don't know if they went as far as Universal does nowadays, or did nowadays with like the MonsterVerse, where they had like 8 movies planned out before one had even come out.
And again, we got so many good movies out of this, and we got one of the most amazing cartoons in my childhood out of this.
If I remember correctly, the cartoon actually picks up after the movie. It's literally about the baby Godzilla that survives and grows up. But for reasons that I don't remember if they're explained or not, this is a good Godzilla, and I don't know if he's pregnant. Maybe they neutered him.
Also, that cartoon did a lot of the things that the Japanese wanted to do with their movies, but then just kind of never did.
But he fights other monsters and stuff, kind of like the old Toho Godzilla movies.
It was the first Godzilla vs. Godzilla fight, and that's something Japan had been talking about for like decades.
But I'm so glad that nothing ever got made after this.
So if you can disassociate the new design and what he is being presented as, and just let all that go and then just watch the movie for what it is, it's actually kind of fun.
It's not good. It's really not good.
I do love this movie. It still holds a special place in my heart.
So yeah, I guess that's my thoughts on Godzilla from 1998. Is I liked it.
This movie's really, really, really stupid.
So I do get the dislike and the hatred for this movie when it comes to what it represents in terms of where it came from, what its origins were. And, you know, Roland Emmerich has stated on record that his idea was totally reinventing the character. But I also feel like Dean Devlin was not keen on that necessarily, but he kind of went along with it. I feel like there are statements he's made over the years saying as such, but I don't know.
So I really like how this movie echoes a similar message that the early Godzilla film was trying to convey about nuclear bombs, but this time it's about the effect humans have on the environment, not just with nuclear testing, but with overfishing and other various things.
I feel like if you can get away from what it does wrong in terms of regarding Godzilla and just take it for a giant monster movie about a lizard running around New York City and causing chaos, it's actually not that bad. It's kind of fun.
I liked it.
It fails in so many ways.
My memories of this movie are more tied up with that there was a period of time when I was a child that everyone was interested in Godzilla. And that's more how I remember this movie. It was the thing that helped me connect to other people.
It was better than I expected to be, in that it was about as good as I remembered it being, but the last time I saw it, I was about 9 years old, so I expected my memory to be bad, but instead it was about as good as I remember, which is better than I expected.
And it had a huge budget behind it, and was marketed everywhere, and it's just like, the Americans do Godzilla. Like, now we're going to show you what it looks like when he's actually scary, and not fun or entertaining in any way, shape, or form.
Although this 90s Hollywood Godzilla wasn't quite up to par, Toho actually put out another Godzilla movie in response to this one, that aptly titled Godzilla 2000, which was awesome, by the way. It's a gritty reboot where Godzilla is back to being the bad guy, except he also reluctantly saves the day from an alien monster, so that's just the icing on the kaiju cake. When the posters for Godzilla 2000 first came out, I was a kid, and I actually thought that it was a sequel to this Godzilla. And I was a little confused when the whole cast was Japanese, and I didn't quite make that connection yet.
But if not for 98, which I will always say is one of the most important films in the franchise, if not for 98, we probably would never have gotten Godzilla 99, the start of the Millennium series. Toho was absolutely not going to touch Godzilla until 2005, but this made people want the dude in the suit again.
I think it was Godzilla 2000 where the real Godzilla fights this thing and just beats the shit out of it.
What cracks me up is that this movie is sort of canon in the Toho Godzilla films, because in Godzilla Final Wars, this monster shows up, but it's not Godzilla, they just call it Zilla. And what's funny is, in that movie, Godzilla totally kicks his ass.
It's awesome.
Zilla gets punked out. He's definitely no king of the monsters.
So, it's only thanks to 98 that we got 99 through 2004.
I thought it was really interesting, the message that they try to put into the film.
I don't have a lot of deep insight and thoughts into this film, but I do defend it now, unlike maybe 10 years ago when I probably wouldn't have.
Godzilla is so deeply ingrained in my personality and who I am. It's such a formative experience for me watching those films growing up that the fact that it wasn't popular really did put a disconnect between myself and my peers.
I feel like people should give it another watch and disassociate the Godzilla aspect of it just a little bit, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
And it's not good.
I like this movie a lot.
It's really not good.
For a year in the late 90s, everyone was a little bit of a Godzilla fan. That's what's important to me.
So, I can't say this is the worst Godzilla movie ever. It's actually pretty far from the worst. Son of Godzilla, anyone? But it's nowhere near the best. Luckily, this wasn't the last American attempt at a Godzilla movie. When Legendary Pictures got their hands on the rights to Godzilla, they didn't try to reinvent the wheel, and they finally got it right.
For my thoughts on movies in the early Godzilla franchise, check out my show Record All Monsters, where we look at the entire history of giant monster movies from King Kong up to the present day. We're just now starting to touch on the films of the 60s, so if you want to be the guy with all the knowledge about monster movies in your friend group as you gear up to see Godzilla vs. Kong on HBO Max on March 31st, it's a good Cliff's Note version of watching the 88 years worth of legacy these two icons carry with them, without having to watch 88 years worth of movies.
Although, I want to say I must have been aware of Godzilla before all this, because I'm pretty sure that I saw King Kong vs. Godzilla before this one, now that I think about it.
Now, who would win?
Now, who's going to win between Godzilla and King Kong?
Okay, so if it were a battle with this Zilla versus Kong, I think Kong would win.
Once again, King Kong doesn't have any shot at all.
So for this one, I'm going to hold off on my thoughts on the 90s Godzilla for next time.
I have no idea, to tell you the truth.
Giant monkey versus a giant lizard, not indestructible nuclear power plant.
But a matchup I've always wanted to see is the 1976 King Kong taking on the 1984 Godzilla from The Return of Godzilla.
It depends on what Godzilla and what King Kong we are talking about.
I even think 1976's Kong is a direct match. I think Skull Island Kong would whoop this thing's ass.
I remember reading rumors about a rematch between the two from this era, around this time, that never got made. And visually, I thought that would be really awesome to see, especially the 80s Godzilla design. I'm not a huge fan of the 70s King Kong. The movie itself is pretty rough, but the design and the effects were pretty good. The 80s Godzilla was, once again, a total radioactive wrecking ball. He was unstoppable. But the 70s King Kong was pretty tough. He was very strong, at least. And he was huge. He was really, really big. Not quite Godzilla height, but...
I very much don't think King Kong should win.
He was a beefy monkey.
This is just because it doesn't have that fire breath. It's just strong and big.
Just due to the fact that Godzilla does have a nuclear breath weapon.
Zilla will wreck King Kong. There's not even a fight.
But then again, King Kong is a giant ape and might be slightly more intelligent.
And even though he technically does get taken out by the Apache choppers with Gatling guns on top of the Twin Towers and falls to his death, there's actually a sequel where he comes back called King Kong Lives, where they give him a heart transplant and resuscitate him. And then he demolishes the American military.
And if he can get behind Godzilla or on Godzilla's back, Godzilla has tiny arms. It's not going to be able to reach back there.
So I feel like he's a little bit more on par with Zilla. He's definitely more intelligent.
Although it does have a tail.
The 80s Godzilla was kind of a mindless beast. He was just kind of stumbling around, didn't seem to have a lot of agency.
Although mostly it just sort of swishes it around and knocks down buildings most of the time.
I think if this King Kong can avoid Godzilla's atomic breath, he might stand a chance, especially if they're fighting near volcano. So yeah, my money's on the 76 King Kong over the 84 Godzilla. But yeah, I think it would be a tough fight. It would have been really cool to see if they could have made that work in the 80s. Plus, I imagine the effects would have been a lot better than the 60s King Kong vs. Godzilla. It would have been really cool to see like a mixture of suitmation and early animatronics. I definitely miss practical effects.
So the next one would be Peter Jackson's King Kong, in which rather than do like, I'm going to do it better than they did it because I'm modern and cool, for better or for worse, essentially just remade the 1933 King Kong. So I am exceptionally glad to be done talking about this piece of and I never want to talk about it again. But I do look forward to the next one. And the next Godzilla film we'll talk about is actually a significant margin better than this piece of shit.
So that was 1998's Godzilla. And up next we have Peter Jackson's 2005 remake of King Kong.
Godzilla will return in 2014's Godzilla, and Kong will return in 2005's King Kong.
And lo, the beast looked upon the face of beauty, and beauty stayed his hand. And from that day forward, he was as one dead.
So you are ready for this voyage, Miss Darrow?
Sure.
Nervous?
Nervous? No. Should I be?
Imagine, if you will, an uncharted island, thought to exist only in myth.
Wall! There's a wall ahead!
That's where I'll shoot my picture.
It's deserted.
Of course it's deserted. The place is a ruin.
Behind the wall!
You saw something. What took her, Carl?
If you haven't found her in 24 hours, there'll be nothing left to find.
Podcasters Assemble is a production of the We Can Make This Work Probably Podcast Network. Find more of our shows at probablywork.com and learn how to contribute to future episodes of Podcasters Assemble by looking us up on Twitter and Instagram at Casters Assemble or joining on Discord. The link is in the show notes. Submissions are always open. Thank you to everyone who's able to contribute to this episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to where you can find them all online. Thank you. Oh God, please, thank you.
Music produced by Deft Stroke Sound. Opening narration written by Eric Slater and performed by Justin Aki. This episode was edited by Eric Slater.
This has been a presentation of the We Can Make This Work
Probably Network.
Follow us on Twitter
at Probably Work for more of our questionable content.
Also, we have a website called probablywork.com.
Eric, you better appreciate this crap, man. I watched like a 2 hour and 40-minute piece of shit just to record this for you.
Matthew Broderick, also known as Nick Tatanopolis, Tardigrade, Tatanopolis, Tattoo Necrosis, Tata Metropolis? Tataopolis, that's it. Anywho, Nick Tartakowski.
Everything humanity does.
So the military sets up in dirt that the gods...
And we see like things are getting dire inside Madison Square Garden, and Jean Reno gives Nick a phone and tells him to tell the military to bomb their location. He and the French guys are going to hold off, if whatever they can. Actually, I think the French guys are already dead at this point. Anyway, he says, call the military, tell them to blow this place up, and Nick can't get through either on the phone he has or a payphone. No, that's it. Yeah, the French guys are still alive. So Jean tells him
they practically nuked that station. So Nick goes. And for some reason...
excuse me, my cat's being a dickhead.
Godzilla.